kinds of issues with synagogue presidents and executive directors, and it's an opportunity to share and have great ideas. So I wanted to say thank you to Toby for that. And some of you were on last night, and I know that you also feel that it was very helpful. And so we thank all our volunteers for really bringing information to everyone at every level in the organization, and for giving everybody an opportunity to get some help to do their position and to do it better. So thank you, Toby, publicly on Facebook. Okay, Rabbi?
Okay, so we have Mr. Barak, Fran Kane. Thank you for singing. And please pause between paragraphs for everyone to say the names of their loved ones. I've been noticing we don't always get to finish what we're saying. So if you can just pause longer than usual. Thank you.
Mishabera avotenu l'chol habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishabera imotenu l'chol habracha levatenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Yasha kochech to you. Thank you for singing. You have a beautiful voice. And we continue with Psalm 94, the Psalm for Wednesday. In my notes, I have written that Karen and Corinne are reading responsibly.
Okay, Corinne, do you want me to start? I'll start.
You can start, it's fine.
Okay, thanks. God of retribution, Adonai, God of retribution, appear.
Judge of the earth, punish the arrogant as they deserve.
How long, Adonai, how long shall the wicked exult?
Swaggering, boasting, they exude arrogance.
Sorry, I'm switching it.
They
Here it is.
They crush your people, Adonai, and oppress your own.
Widow and strangers they slay, orphans they murder.
They say, Adonai does not see. The God of Jacob pays no heed.
Think clearly, you simpletons. When will you fools be wise?
Surely the one who shapes the ear can hear. Surely the one who forms the eye can see.
Surely God, who disciplines nations, will chastise, teaching mortals to understand.
Adonai knows human schemes, how futile they are.
Blessed are those whom God disciplines and teaches Torah.
Training them to wait calmly in adversity until a pit be dug for the wicked.
Adonai will not abandon God's people. God will not forsake God's very own.
Justice will return to the righteous. All the upright in heart will strive for it.
Who will stand up for me against the ungodly? Who will take my part against evil people?
Were it not for Adonai's help, I would be in my grave.
When my foot slips, your loving kindness, Adonai, supports me.
When I am filled with cares, your comfort soothes my soul.
Will the immoral claim you as their partner, defending evil under the mantle of law?
They conspire against the righteous. They condemn the innocent to death.
But Adonai is my refuge, My God is my sheltering rock.
God will turn their evil against them and destroy them with their own guile. Adonai, our God, will destroy them. Let us sing to Adonai. Let us rejoice in our Creator.
Let us greet God with thanksgiving, giving psalms of praise.
Adonai is exalted beyond all that is worshipped.
Yasher Kochachan to both of you for leading us today in the recitation of the psalm for Wednesday. They have officially told me I'm not able to stream. I'm going to try again. Let's see how much I can multitask. After all, I'm a woman and a mother, right? I should be able to multitask as I teach you all. I don't know how well it's going to work, but we'll see. I'm going to try this again. If you ever wonder why I start really early to stream on our page, it's because sometimes it doesn't work. So it's very interesting, chapter 5 of Pirkei Avot, because each of the teachings so far have different numbers. So in the Olitsky book of commentary, it's number 18 that I'm teaching today. In the Koran edition, it's 22. In the PALS, as they say, the Pirkei Avot Lev Shalem, it's 20, and it's 21 in the social action and the art scroll. Gets very confusing.
Why is that? Why are they all different?
Because they're different. There are different girsaot, different versions of it, and depending on which, if you think back to like when we found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there are all these different versions of things. So there are different versions of Pirkei Avot also. There are different versions of many things. I remember distinctly when I studied Talmud at JTS that they would often tell us how it was, how we edit books today, and there's some that are censored. They used to censor our ancient texts as well. So if there was any text that had, or discussions that had early Christianity or ideas about Jesus in it, that was often cut out. So if you saw it, this isn't the relationship to here, but there it's a commonality that a lot of the texts are different. So the way they divided it is different too on what teachings it is, and some editors had a different girsa, a different version of it in a different division. So I am just glad that I'm teaching this text and I don't have to teach anybody else to do it, because if I had to tell you which, it would get very confusing. And I can tell you that I am going to put aside the whole Facebook thing today. I am recording it, and when someone in our office can edit it, then we'll post it. But unfortunately, it's not working today. That's what happens. Maybe it's because they came out with some decisions and new things in Facebook. Also, the children in my area are home early today from school. Who knows why? As someone said to me yesterday, when the computers work well, they work well, and when they don't, that's what happens. So our teaching today is very relevant. Here's why. First, it was a little confusing, then I found it very relevant. Whoever influences the masses to be righteous shall not be the cause of sin, but one who influences the masses to sin will not be given the means to repent. So who's the first person that they're referring to about the righteous? Moses was righteous and influenced the masses to be righteous. So the merit of the masses was to Moses' credit. As it is said, he executed the Lord's righteousness and God's decisions with Israel. Deuteronomy chapter 33:21. Jeroboam ben Nevat sinned and caused the masses to sin. So the sin of the masses was charged against him, as it is said in the first book of Kings, chapter 15, verse 30, for the sins of Jeroboam that he committed and that he caused Israel to commit. So an overall idea of what this is about, it's about leadership. It's about a leader who leads people for better, for righteousness, or a leader like Moses, or a leader like Jeroboam, who was not the best leader in our history. So I'll break it down and explain more. One of the questions that's being asked in this Mishnah is, why did the rabbis place so much faith in those who seek the mantle of leadership? Now, if you think about it, and a leader is a dugma, is an example to everybody else. So if the leader behaves in a certain way, other people will learn from that leader how to behave. And why are certain people, according to the rabbis, believe that they have the capacity to be leaders, that they're capable of being heroes? You know how sometimes you can see a person or a child or anybody and say, that person needs to be a leader. And we cultivate their leadership to be a good leader. And then there are others who don't know how to play well in the sandbox necessarily. And you're like, they might not be the best leaders, maybe in a different capacity they can lead. Other thing that this is teaching is, are we individuals, or are we individually responsible? Or are we collectively responsible? Now, Moses was one who realized, once he got over his little fear of the burning bush and saying that he wasn't a man who could speak, that he was in charge of the collective responsibility and the collective good of all. And what kind of leaders do we want? Someone who, like Moses, who we don't have to really tell much about. We know that he was a selfless dedication to everybody. He was a humble man. If you ever want an example of someone who was humble, that was Moses. He didn't seek power or glory. He said to God in the burning bush, I don't want this. Please, I don't speak well. How am I going to do all of this? But he realized that he had a mission. His mission was to serve the people, his Israelite brothers and sisters, when he realized that he was part of them, that he needed to bring the people to freedom, and he needed to teach the people principles. Once he brought them out of freedom, that wasn't his end job. If you think about it, he had another really important mission to transfer God's Torah to the people, to teach them the laws that will enable them to not only be a free people, but a holy nation as well, to teach Kedusha. And a leader like Moses influences people because of his righteousness, that he was acted and thought in a praiseworthy way, and he showed his accomplishments to his followers. But of course, we know that every leader is not 100% perfect. What did we see with Moses? When he was told to speak to the rock, he hit the rock. And that error didn't go away. That was his sin that didn't allow him to then enter the lands of Israel. So every leader, no matter how righteous they are, still has flaws. Now, who's this Jeroboam? Jeroboam was categorized as an arrogant tyrant. He was a wicked leader. And he was the first king of the northern kingdom of Israel. And what is that? It tells us that he was the first king of a divided Israel. So instead of uniting people like we would hope that a leader would, he actually was leading a divided nation. His reign commenced following a revolt of the 10 northern Israelite tribes against Rehoboam that put an end to that united monarchy. And he reigns for 22 years. Now, that's a long time. They didn't have time limits. Well, clearly he was a king. He was the member of the tribe of Ephraim. And this is so sad, in my opinion. So often in the Bible, we have no idea who people's mothers are. But his mother specifically is named in the first book of Kings, chapter 11, verse 26. And what was her name? Sarua. And what does Sarua mean? We read about this a few weeks ago in our Torah portion, leprous. Okay, so can you imagine? This poor woman's name was leprous. And not only that she had such a name, but she was also a widow. So from the origin, he didn't start out so well because his mother was a poor widow who had this name called leprous. He had 2 sons, Avijah and Nadav succeeded him on the throne. And unfortunately, Yerovam didn't unite the nation. He divided the nation. He wound up, during his reign, splitting Israel into 2 kingdoms. And he didn't have a fostering idea of a unifying vision for the nation. Rather, what did he do? He's known to have promoted idolatry. This was not the religious Jewish leader that we wanted. Forget about religious. It's not the Jewish leader that we wanted. He influenced people to think and act in an immoral way, and to share in the sinful deeds of their followers. So it's really huge 2 extremes that they have here of showing how Moses was this righteous leader that brought people together, and Yerovam split the people all together. So what is it teaching us about leadership and a vision? A vision is to, I hope, in our nation of Judaism, which we also just read about a few weeks ago, Parsha Kedoshim, the holiness, that one of our missions as a Jewish people is to be a holy nation, and that we should bring Kedusha into each of our lives, that we should have inclusion, collaboration, respect, And a leader like Yerovam just didn't do that. So he leads people to sin. And because he does that, the mission is teaching us he doesn't even have the ability to repent. But then you think about Moses, who brought the people to better ways, to more holiness, to have communal responsibility. And that's another idea that we should really take out of this Mishnah, that Moses was teaching righteous behavior, that we're respectful and responsible for each other. Yerovam, the Hebrew word is lahavdil, the total opposite. His country that he was ruling split. And it was like a promotion of immoral behavior, not what we want to see. So it really makes us not only think about leadership, but also each of our roles in community. And as part of the Jewish community and the Jewish people and as sisters, we don't live in a bubble alone. We are the collective, all together responsible for each other. And just think about that, okay? What is so collective that we need each other for in Judaism? A minyan, the quorum of 10 to come together. And even if you're the first person there or the 10th person there, every person is that important 10th person. So there's a poem or a writing, I don't think it's not in poetic form, by Abba Kovner, and he wrote One Among a Minyan. It's originally in Hebrew, and I wanted to read it to you. It's a Jewish thing, one of the most unique aspects of Judaism, to be one person in a minyan, to know that the 9 need a 10th, and the 1 needs the 9. It may be that this is the most meaningful thing in Judaism, and there's nothing more uniquely characteristic and Jewish in this movement in which I was educated. My prayer is always to be one of the many, that my good words combine with the words uttered by the congregation. Even the individual standing closer to the ark is just the one leading the service and nothing more. There's no meaning to life if it is lived solely by one's own sake. Only in relation to shared experience, to the words that come to you and come from afar toward you, does standing before God in prayer have meaning. One, but one in a community. So we all count. Yes, one person might be up there as the Shaliach Tzibor, as the person leading, but they need every single person around them as well. Right, and it reminds me of the play, The 10th Man, which we should really revise to the 10th person that Ellen wrote. Kaddish wrote it. I remember one of my congregants once told me about it, and I think he came to Minyan the next day with a copy of it for me to read. So what do you think about that? And I don't want to get political, because let me tell you, when I was reading this and learning it, I was like, wow, this could go down a really bad path, but we're not going to go down that path. But just think about the leaders that we pick out there, and that your own responsibility for yourselves. And a lot of us have been living alone lately. You always have, possibly, but really since March, when the pandemic started in 2020, we were individuals living, but we were here collectively with each other, helping each other. I pray, I hope. It's wonderful. We started at the beginning talking about our UPS drivers and how we should know the people who helped us during this time connect to the outside world. So any thoughts, any ways that you saw a connection to this? Edith.
That's so exciting that I'm here with this group to hear this. Several years ago, I was in California visiting my daughter, and I always went to the synagogue there. And when we would walk in, the first thing the rabbi would say was, "Are you converted?" And we were like, "No." And it mattered, because in that synagogue, they barely had their minyan. And that did it for me. I had no interest in conversion until I experienced that. And I thought, boy, I want to be counted. And so that was the turning point for me. And you just made that connection. I never knew why it mattered.
That's so beautiful. And you count, you're connected for sure. Thank you. I'm going to say it publicly. You're one person that I told somebody earlier today, before Makom B'Yachad, I never knew Edith. And I'm so glad that I got to meet you, and you don't live too far away from me. My daughter's going to be in Baltimore, so you never know, post-pandemic, when I'm in Maryland, I might show up at your house.
That's exciting. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. And you really have to think about it, that we're here all together. that so many of us would have not been able to say Kaddish, to learn, to even see another human being if we didn't have Makom B'Yachad. So you always hear me. I want to see who else wants. Gilda.
I think it's one of the reasons why I felt so upset when I turned 13, because I was in junior congregation and I did everything. And then I got into the main congregation and I could do nothing. And I didn't count for anything. And it really, really burned in me all those years until the conservative movement, changed its the policy. That's not the right word, but yes. And I think there are a lot of women who felt that way. And I'm really happy that we do count and that we can have the same obligations, but also the same counting as everybody else.
Right. And there's still communities that don't count women, both obviously outside of the conservative movement, but even within the conservative movement. And I think the other thing that we need to realize, that the collective and the individual come together, that we are all individuals, that we might not all have the same skill set, the same talents, but we need everyone to be here together. Just the way perhaps at a time, some places might need hopefully more leadership like Moses, but some places might need a leadership like Yerovam. That perhaps some communities need to be broken apart before they can come together again, and dismantled and changed a little bit. But everybody brings their own individual talents to the collective community. So I can only see my first page. Is that my mother raising her hand?
Yes.
All
we
right.
We were always told the 11th is just as important as the 10th, because without the 11th, the 10th can't work out.
So true, because inevitably someone's got to go out during the service. So good point. Thank you. Corinne.
I think we should and could relate it to sisterhood and to leadership within the sisterhoods. And I think that's really important. And everyone, most of us are leaders or have been in some way in sisterhood or women's league. And I think that we all are different kinds of leaders. And I don't think that a sisterhood president necessarily wants everyone to do what she does, but it's bringing out the best in them and making them be the best they can do. And yes, emulating some of them. But what I'm saying is a leader doesn't need to necessarily expect everyone to be the same as them, but you've got to be able to know how to bring out the best in each of the people that you're dealing with. And that's how leaders are made.
Right.
And it's up to us to bring forth and recognize those leaders and then foster them, and everyone will lead differently.
And it just goes along with the mission that we studied yesterday and last week about the diversity, and sure, that Shammai, Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai didn't always agree with each other. They had different ideas, but our world and our community and the Jewish community needs both the opinions of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel to have that diversity, and the same time as having tolerance as well for all. So Cindy, do you have a short comment? Because we just have to wrap up.
Very short. That sometimes you don't know you are the leader. Because if you go ahead and be your authentic self with your own idea that is you're contributing, sometimes later on, a few weeks later, somebody said to me, I heard you say that at a meeting, or I heard you say that to a friend in the grocery store, and I went and I did what you said and it was perfect. And you never know where your ideas go. And if you are authentic to yourself, then your truths are being said.
I like that. It's very true. You don't know how your influence has affected somebody else, both in the hopefully in the positive, but also in the negative. And that this Mishnah is warning us that there's a positive and a negative to our leadership and how we can influence others. I wrote that down. I like that, the authentic self. And very true for all of us. So I hope this gave you something to think about, some food for thought as we move forward through our day and through our life. And I'm going to turn to Sandy Berenbaum now, who will be reading our names of our loved ones who we remember today.
Is there anyone that you'd like to add before I begin?
No, okay. With love in our hearts, we remember our dear friend Audrey Maddens, Sharon Lynn Sussman, Ellen Babbitt, Theodore Fishman, Doris Hildebrandt, Ruth Lewis Bloomfield, Michael Klingbaum, Michael Schrank, Shirley Shapiro, Carol Hope Taub, David Levy, Marley Rogers, Ruth Marcus, Joel Lieberman, Ricky Hurling, Rabbi Marian Schulweitz, Malka Schulweis, John Shapiro, Bunny Kaplan, Rabbi Stanley Kazin. May their memories forever be a blessing. Thank you, Sandy. And I know that Sandy had asked if there's anybody else of any loved ones that have passed recently, family, friends, a yurt site. You can unmute yourself at this time if you do have a name to add. And as we all unmute ourselves and rise, as we'll be reciting the mourner's Kaddish, please do that. If you're going to be responding, you can unmute as well. And we'll begin together. Yitzgadal, Yitzkadash, Shemei, Yalma, Ira, Irute, Biamli, Alpne, Bechayim, Biyomim, Bechayim, Decho, Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Bisman,
Kariv,
Be'imru,
Amen.
Yehi, Shemei, Rabba,
Mevorach,
Leolam,
Olam,
Mei,
Eomaya,
Yitzbarach,
Yistabach,
Yitzpa'ar,
Yisraman, Yisnaseh, Yisadar, Yishaleh, Yishalal, Shemei, Shah, Le'elo min kol berachata v'shirata ushbechata nechemata amiran emo imru amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba Maya Chaim Leinu Yakol Israel Imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Rimamav Huya Aseh Shalom Aleinu Akol Israel Imru Amen.
I want to wish everybody a good and pleasant day. I'm just going to unmute everybody so there's not background noise while Debbie speaks, but Debbie, you'll have to unmute yourself and it's all yours.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for that wonderful teaching. And I always especially like it when it's interactive and people comment and have something to say. It's always worthwhile to listen to our sisters. And Edith, you don't speak often, but when you speak, it's very powerful and we're always happy to hear you speak. So thanks everybody for being together. It's a miserable day on the East Coast. It's raining, it's cold. And I know somebody wrote that it's nice and sunny in Arizona. Thanks for writing that. But it's wonderful to be together and it's always warm inside Makom Biachad. And there's a lot of things going on. Women's League Week came out. We have some interesting events for Tikkun Leil Shavuot, which are coming up. And I know that in the regions and in the sisterhoods, it's a little slow because everyone is recovering from their active region conferences or the ones that are still to happen. So just thanks everybody for all your support and everything you do. And